Alan Rogers took cautious steps through the ankle-deep snow, each crunch beneath his boots echoing loudly in the silence. The wind clawed at his coat, and snowflakes whipped around him, biting sharply at his cheeks. His heart thudded steadily in his chest, matching the eerie rhythm of the creaking branches overhead. Approaching the fence line, he shone his flashlight slowly back and forth, the beam cutting through the swirling storm. He squinted, his eyes straining against the relentless snow, until finally, a shadowy lump appeared clearly beneath the dormant rose bushes. His breath hitched. It wasn't large, but definitely alive. He could now see the faint movement of shallow breathing. Alan felt a mixture of relief and concern flood his chest as he hurried closer, his hammer lowered but still gripped tightly. As he bent down, he aimed his flashlight closer to the figure nestled in the snow. It was a small dog, trembling violently, fur matted with ice. Its large brown eyes blinked slowly up at him, filled with fear and confusion. A pang of sympathy jolted Alan's heart as he realized the creature must have been stranded for hours, abandoned to the mercy of the blizzard. Gently, Alan reached out his hand, speaking softly, trying not to frighten the animal further. "Hey there, buddy," he murmured, voice soothing despite the howling wind. "It's okay. Let's get you inside." The dog flinched at first, whimpering quietly, but soon relaxed enough for Alan to carefully scoop it into his arms. The animal felt alarmingly thin, its body cold and shaking. Alan tucked it carefully against his chest, shielding it from the bitter wind. Walking back to the house felt longer, each step made heavier by concern and the creature's weight against him. He couldn't help but wonder how it had ended up out here all alone, forgotten in the freezing darkness. Once inside, Alan quickly shut the door, blocking out the blizzard. Warmth surrounded them instantly, but the little dog still shivered uncontrollably. He gently placed it down on a towel by the fireplace, its tiny body curled up, eyes filled with uncertainty. Alan moved swiftly, grabbing blankets and filling a bowl with water, setting it beside the creature along with some leftover chicken from dinner. Watching the animal slowly begin to relax and nibble at the food, Alan finally took a moment to sit down. The fire crackled softly, casting shadows across the walls, and he studied the dog more carefully. Its collar was worn and faded, with a rusted tag that simply read, "Benny." "Benny," Alan whispered thoughtfully. "Who lost you out there in this storm?" The dog lifted its head slightly, responding to the gentle tone in Alan's voice, as if recognizing kindness after a long absence. In that quiet exchange, Alan felt a stirring in his heart, a connection he hadn't experienced in many lonely years. As the hours passed and Benny warmed by the fire, Alan found himself reflecting on how empty the house had felt since Helen passed away. He hadn't realized just how much he missed the simple companionship of another living being. Watching Benny sleep peacefully, Alan made a quiet decision. Tomorrow, he'd reach out and try to find Benny's owner, though a part of him already hoped no one would come forward. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving a fresh blanket of white over everything. Alan woke to find Benny already awake, wagging his tail weakly but with undeniable gratitude. After breakfast, Alan carefully dialed the local vet's office, describing Benny and leaving his phone number. He did the same with a few nearby shelters, feeling his heart sink slightly each time he imagined Benny's owner claiming him. Days stretched into weeks, and Benny settled seamlessly into Alan's life. Together they enjoyed quiet mornings by the fireplace, afternoons tending the garden as winter gave way to spring, and peaceful evening walks beneath the twilight sky. Alan couldn't help but smile each time Benny trotted happily beside him, seeming more lively every day. One sunny morning, Alan's phone rang. His heart leapt nervously as he picked up. It was the local shelter. Someone had come forward, a family who'd been desperately searching for Benny. Alan felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. He knew Benny belonged with his rightful owners, but he couldn't deny the ache growing within his chest at the thought of letting him go. Later that day, a car pulled into Alan's driveway. A young couple and their little girl stepped out, eyes bright with anticipation. Benny recognized their voices immediately, barking excitedly as Alan opened the door. The little girl cried joyfully, running to embrace her long-lost friend. Alan's heart swelled with bittersweet happiness as he watched Benny lick her cheeks, tail wagging fiercely. The family thanked Alan repeatedly, tears of gratitude streaming down their faces as they explained how Benny had slipped away during a hike and vanished into the woods. They had feared the worst and never imagined he'd been saved from the winter storm. As Alan waved goodbye, he felt the familiar heaviness return. The house grew silent again, and the emptiness seemed to echo louder than ever. He sighed deeply, resigning himself to the quiet solitude once more. Yet he found comfort knowing Benny was where he truly belonged. The following morning, another knock at the door surprised Alan. Opening it cautiously, he found the family standing on his porch once more, holding a small basket in their hands. "We know Benny meant a lot to you," the woman said softly, handing Alan the basket. Inside lay a puppy, eyes wide and curious, peering up at Alan expectantly. "This little guy needs a home too. Maybe you both could help each other." Alan's eyes filled with tears as he gently lifted the tiny creature from the basket. The puppy instantly nestled into his chest, warm and trusting. In that moment, Alan realized sometimes fate had a funny way of leading you exactly where you needed to be. He smiled gratefully, feeling the emptiness inside finally beginning to heal. Life had come full circle, and Alan knew he wouldn't face the coming winters alone anymore.